Before I got to the island, I should mention one other thing, survival tool, if you will, that I took is the folks at the military base said, well, if we have to come rescue you, you need this Sharpie pen. And protocol is if you have to apply a tourniquet, if a shark bites off your leg or whatever, you write a T on your forehead. Then when we come, if they come, I don't know how they would come, but they'd know that you'd applied a tourniquet. I thought, I've got 4 limbs. How hard can it be? But I took the Sharpie pen, and about midweek, I got a little lonely, and there were these hermit crabs that would endlessly wander through my camp, and I just wondered if it was the same ones doing laps or if it was a whole different one at the same time. So I picked one up and wrote number one on his shell and put him down, and number two later and put him down. And, by the end of the week, I had 126 numbered friends.
Hi, it's Andrew. As I mentioned on the last episode, I'm going to be using this podcast stream to rapid prototype new ideas I think you'll love. That's the case today. We've got something big, new, and different, and I'm excited to share it with you and to hear what you think. During a divided time in America, our love of sports and fitness can cross party lines and keep us healthy as individuals and bring us together as a nation. The United States of Sweat, presented by Choose the Hard Way, will feature legendary political leaders and policymakers sharing stories about what they do to stay healthy, fit, and physically active. When we sweat together, everyone wins. When I decided to launch the United States of Sweat, I knew the first guest I wanted to land an endurance athlete of a different kind, Ambassador Jeff Flake. Ambassador Flake recently served as U.S. Ambassador to Turkey and previously represented Arizona in both the United States Senate and House. Ambassador Flake has taught at Harvard, Stanford, and Yale, and now leads the Institute of Politics at Arizona State. In 2025, he was knighted by Sweden for his role in securing their NATO accession. Ambassador Flake is also the author of the New York Times bestseller, Conscience of a Conservative, a rejection of destructive politics and a return to principle. In his spare time, Ambassador Flake likes to maroon himself on deserted islands and survive with little more than a spear and a machete. Ambassador Flake and his wife Cheryl are the parents of 5 grown children. Senator Flake and I first crossed paths in 2018 when then Senators Flake and Chris Coons sent a letter to Strava, my employer at the time, about our global heat map and data privacy when I was running global communications. That led to 3,000 inbound media inquiries in less than 24 hours and a trip to the Hill, and one of the most thrilling and fulfilling experiences of my professional career that I will save for a different episode on a different day. Find Ambassador Flake at jeffflake.com and on social at Jeff Flake. Find those links, you guessed it, in the show notes. My co-host on the United States of Sweat is Jonathan Kaplan. You may know Jonathan as the author of the popular Writing With newsletter and for his performance at the January 2025 Beyond the Peloton by Choose the Hard Way training camp, where his seat post would not stop slipping and he could not stop laying down the watts. But wait, there's more. Jonathan is a former political journalist, congressional aide, State Department official, and most recently, comm strategist for the world's largest human rights funder. Jonathan now runs Essington Road Strategies, helping organizations navigate Washington, shape policy, and manage reputational risk. He also writes Writing With, a newsletter and podcast exploring the intersection of pro cycling, media, business, and politics. Find that at writingwithkaplan.substack.com. It's a great read, highly recommend for senior executives, professional athletes, and political leaders. And I know that many of my listeners fall into one of those 3 buckets. Podcasts aren't optional anymore. They're mission critical. At One Real Voice, I coach leaders one-on-one to thrive as storytellers and stand out in the long-form podcast conversations where real influence is built. When you're ready to be great, DM me at HardwayPod or send an email to hello@onerealvoice.com. Now, let's get started with the United States of Sweat. Remember, this is the beginning of this project, DM me at HardwayPod on Instagram. I would love to hear what you think about what we're doing today and where we're headed. Thanks for listening.
As far as I can remember, I grew up on a dry, dusty ranch in Snowflake, Arizona, and I just wanted water. I wanted something that wasn't a dry, dusty ranch. So I used to love to read about, sailing and ocean adventures. I read the book Dove when I was a kid. That some 16-year-old kid, which I was at the time, did the first circumnavigation around the world just on his own, single-handed, on a boat, and I just was captivated. Beyond that, I really like to read sailing adventures gone bad. Yeah, that was kind of my favorite genre.
It's
And
a
I
big
just wondered,
genre.
yeah, there is. There's tons out there. Hamilton's Adventure, Endurance, or I mean, there are a million, and I've read a lot of them. But I just always wondered if I were marooned on a deserted island, could I survive? With minimal tools or whatever. And I think I talked about it so much. My wife finally said, if this is your midlife crisis, get it over with. Maroon yourself already. So, so I did. Uh, and in 2009, there was a congressional break in August, and I had planned it for several months before, and just identified an island on Google Earth, and got permission from the Marshallese government to encamp myself on it, and then had to make the arrangements to do it.
As one does, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was a lot of fun though. I got there. I had to fly to Hawaii, then to Majuro, then to Kwajalein, and then get a fishing boat to take me, 3 hours away to this little island about 20 acres big called Jabinwat, and drop me off, and promised to pick me up a week later. And so I had a few tools. I had a pole spear and a mask and fin and a snorkel and a magnifying glass to start fires and a machete and a hammock. I think that was about it. And no food or water. It was to me, it was a blast. But I didn't count on everything. I, I really didn't do as much research as I should have. If I would have, that first time I would have eaten coconut crabs. I would have hunted them at night. I did that on later trips, but on this first one, I got all of my food from the ocean, and that was a bit sketchy. A lot of sharks, that kind of thing. But I did it, and I loved it. And it's not everybody's cup of tea. But I have to say, when I got back, only a couple of members of Congress knew I'd done it. Paul Ryan, he's a bit of a survivalist, and I talked to him about it. A few others in the House of Representatives, but it happened to be the summer. This was 2009, and a certain governor from South Carolina had taken the Appalachian Trail, and instead, we knew later was in Argentina with his mistress, and word started leaking out around that time that Flake had been to some island, and, and, my my wife says nobody's going to believe you were alone. Don't you know that? And so I figured probably not. So I took my journal entries and took a few pictures. I had a tripod and a timer there, and went to the Washington Post. Thought I'd preempt it. Said, "Hey, did this crazy thing," and they actually wrote up a pretty good piece. You can still find it in the archives, the Washington Post. Anyway, but they did a good piece, and it kind of laid it to rest that I was doing something else. But I found out at that time, I thought it was just me with this crazy idea. But I figured, after that, I got so much response that it's just about every guy's dream, I think, to get on an island alone and survive. And so that's what's been fun about it.
And the day that you got dropped off, you mentioned you had a few tools in your bag. I'm curious, why those tools, and what was the filter for what could be there and what had to stay at home? And when that boat pulled away, what did you feel like?
Yeah, that's interesting. We got to the island, and I had, like I said, a few tools. I maybe didn't mention I had a little desalinator. There's no
Right.
fresh water on those islands, just a lot of coconuts, but you can only drink so much coconut water. Let me tell you, it's
Right.
so sweet after a while, you just can't stomach it. So I had those things, and I put them in a little ice chest, and we were kind of floating it to the island. The Marshallese the people were there, but then this was right near late afternoon, and there were some sharks right around the boat, and they wouldn't get in with me to 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 get my stuff to shore, but I was anxious to get the thing started, so I just jumped in and pulled the stuff to shore, then gave them back their ice chest, and they pulled away, and I really didn't. I thought, now I'm here. This is what I've been waiting for. But let me tell you, that night I strung up my hammock between a couple of coconut trees, and there was some other trees there, so there wasn't as much light coming in, and it became dark, and there were some clouds, and it was just completely dark. And I realized then I wasn't prepared for the yeah, to be on an island alone, completely alone, and everything scares you. That part of Castaway where Tom Hanks, is there, and he doesn't know what the sound is around him, and he gets spooked and finds out it's coconuts dropping. I can tell you that part of that movie is very real. It scares the heck out of you. So yeah, that first night was a bit spooky to be alone. I didn't sleep very well. But yeah, it's I did figure that first night I'm in for a lot more than I bargained. I should have done more research. I should have been better prepared, but it worked out.
Can you just talk a bit about the preparation besides reading books? And just curious, have you read Hampton Side's book about Captain Cook?
No, I haven't read that one. I think I've read about all the others.
Doesn't end well.
But my favorite series, I mean, no, it does not. The Bounty has got to be the greatest story ever told. True story. Fletcher Christian and the others, and Captain Bligh. I've read just about every account from every side of that. It's just a great story. But this one, I mean, I didn't do much preparation. I'm a farm boy from Arizona. I hadn't done much spearfishing, a couple of times in Hawaii before, and I should have probably honed those skills a little better. And I didn't know fish, which ones I should eat and which ones I shouldn't. I picked up a poster before that had fish that occur in the Pacific, and I took that with me. And on the way out to the island, I had the fishermen put an X through the ones I shouldn't eat. And some are poisonous on different reefs, or poisonous all the time. And so I had that little chart thing of fish. And so sometimes when I would spear a fish, I'd have to bring it back to camp and hold it up to the chart and say, should I eat this? And so I wasn't well prepared. I really wasn't. Fortunately, I didn't get sick. I had enough to eat, but it was tough sometimes. In the Marshall Islands, there are a lot of sharks, mostly black tip reef sharks that don't bother you too much. But if there's blood in the water, they're there and they circle around you, and they're white tip sharks and some tiger sharks I gratefully didn't see. But yeah, there's a lot that can hurt you, and I would drag my fish a long way behind me with a rope. So if the shark wanted something, he'd go for the fish and not me. But yeah, I should have done a lot more prep. Like I said, I should have found out, the coconut crabs that occur on those islands. You can go and hunt them at night in the middle of the island, and I did that on later trips. But that would have been a lot better than some of the fish that I ate.
And I have to imagine for people who are in a highly public role, such as yourself, I mean, you have been your entire professional life, the demands on your time and the amount of time you're spending interacting with other people, attending to their needs, being available to communicate, being on call is every waking moment. And then suddenly you're on this island, it's just you and your thoughts. What was the experience like to just have solitude?
Well, that was good, but it's overrated. After a while, you just want some companionship. Yeah, I mean, people ask, why did you really do this? Were you looking to discover yourself? I said, no, not really. I was afraid I'd be disappointed. I'm a pretty shallow guy, I guess. Didn't want to think deep thoughts. I just wanted to survive and just thought it would be fun. So it wasn't looking for any deep spiritual meaning necessarily, but you kind of get that when you're there. But one thing that got me by the end of the week, one lesson I took away is, I witnessed, seven of the most beautiful sunsets in the world. And it had some experiences that were just really cool, spearing a fish, getting to shore before the sharks circle around or whatever else. And then I look around, there's nobody to share it with. You're all alone. And there's that old poem, "No man is an island." I guess it's true. You miss human companionship. And I, when I wrote about it later, in that Washington Post piece, I wrote about, when I was about midweek, I got a little lonely. Before I got to the island, I should mention one other thing, survival tool, if you will, that I took is the folks at the military base said, "Well, if we have to come rescue you, you need this Sharpie pen. Protocol is if you have to apply a tourniquet, if a shark bites off your leg or whatever, you write a T on your forehead. Then when we come, if they come, I don't know how they would come, but they'd know that you'd applied a tourniquet." I thought, I've got, four limbs. How hard can it be? But I took the Sharpie pen. And about midweek, I got a little lonely, and there were these hermit crabs that would endlessly wander through my camp. And I just wondered if it was the same ones doing laps or if it was a whole different one. At the same time, so I picked one up and wrote number one on his shell and put him down, and number two later, and put him down. And, by the end of the week, I had 126 numbered friends. I still remember 72 very well, and 44, and some of them were favorites. So, yeah, you get lonely when you're alone like that. My heart goes out to real castaways who do this because they're forced to.
Constituents of another sort.
Yeah, that's it. But that's what people have latched onto, and I don't know how many times I spoke at events or whatever, and the hosts of the events later would give me a volleyball, commemorative Wilson volleyball with the bloody handprint on it. I have several of those
Right.
still in my closet at home.
I mean,
But
everybody
it
needs
became a
one.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. At least one.
Yeah.
No, but it was good, and I took a couple of other trips too. I took my two youngest kids when we were going through the Senate campaign. I told them, if we get through this campaign, I'll take you back to the island. And we went back, not to the same island, just a different island across the massive Kwangju Lagoon, but had a similar experience there. It was just great. And then later on, I went with Martin Heinrich, the Democratic senator from New Mexico, and Discovery Channel came along and filmed the episode, so called it Rival Survival. It was pretty awful television, frankly, because they it's best those naked and afraid shows and whatnot. They want people to fight, and it's a lot better if there's contention. And Martin and I, we were friendly, and we liked each other, and we had fun that way. And they kind of wanted us to fight a little more, I think.
What was it like to do that with the television production crew there versus your other adventures?
Yeah, it changes it quite a
Yeah.
bit. It was tough though. The only thing we had were each of us had a swim mask, so we could see the sharks as they circled us. And we had, let's see, we both of us thought, hey, we don't need a fire starter because he in New Mexico and me in Arizona, we could light a fire with any two sticks, or you get a 2-liter Coke bottle, which there are bottles on every island in the world now, thousands of them, and you could just use it as a magnifying glass. So we were very adept in our own backyards at starting fires. And so we got to the island, and we didn't have a fire starter, and we failed miserably all week to start a fire, all smoke and no embers. And it was rather embarrassing for both of us, but we ate raw fish and coconut crabs. One of them crawled over Martin in the middle of the night on the beach, that's we just slept out on the beach, and it would have been great if we could have eaten that coconut crab, but you really can't eat crabs unless you cook them. And so we were resigned to raw clams and fish and all the coconut we could eat. But that was a lean week that way. But yeah, it does. It changes the experience when you have the cameras. I mean, the camera folks are there. They were the same crew that filmed Naked and Afraid, and they would tell us stories of some other survivalists. Then they would go away at night and just leave us with a camera in case something happened, like a coconut crab crawling over somebody. And they went to another island, and we just imagined them over there, in some conga line with a big feast of food when we were left with nothing. But anyway, Martin and I, we get along and enjoyed ourselves. He's a good spear fisherman, and he's adventurous, and we had fun. And when we back, I should say, the purpose was to show our colleagues that Republicans and Democrats can get along. And so we didn't tell any of our colleagues, and so it just leaked out as soon as we got back, and that was quite something. Some people just couldn't understand. Bernie Sanders still can't understand why we were doing something like that. but but we went on a lot of the television shows, and went on David Letterman in his last days, and Stephen Colbert ran a clip of us saying Flake and Heinrich proved once and for all Republicans and Democrats can get along if death is the only option. So that's it. We've empirically proven it. But it was fun to do. And anyway, I'd love to do it again.
And when you're not doing those kinds of adventures, what's your daily fitness routine look like?
There's no daily one because I travel so much. During the past 3 years, during the ambassadorship, it was nice. We had a large residence in Ankara, it's in Türkiye, and there were 10 acres and 2 tennis courts. I think it was the only residence in the world that has an indoor and an outdoor tennis court, and we made good use of them. My wife and me, we did a lot of diplomacy on the tennis court. And there were a lot of people from the embassy community who played as well. But what I liked most was playing squash. There was a Sheraton Resort just a quarter mile from the residence. And the first day we were there, I discovered they had a squash court. And I had played squash, 30 some years before as a Mormon missionary in South Africa. And then later, my wife and I lived in the country of Namibia for a year, and I played there, and then come home, and there's no squash really on the West Coast or anywhere in Arizona or Utah. So that's been tough to be without it. But while I was in Turkey for 3 years, Monday through Saturday, basically, I would play squash early in the morning. I like squash because I think of all the racket sports, it burns more calories per hour. 45 minutes of it just gets you really tired. And so that was a good workout that I could do without burning into much of my day.
And what about on the campaign trail? I mean, you ran for office 6 times. Is that right? I mean, that's a grueling...
6 times in the House, and then once for the Senate.
Okay, 7.
So 7 times. Yeah.
How did you maintain?
Yeah, that's grueling.
Or could you maintain even a semblance of fitness while doing that?
A bit. I used to like to run a little more. I've never been a real runner, but during my time, whether I was in Washington or in Arizona, I did a lot of 5 a.m. Basketball at one of the Mormon chapels. They all have a gym there, and so we did a lot of basketball during that time during the campaigns. And if you're doing it at 5 a.m., you're not encroaching on much of the rest of your day. But when you're traveling, as you do in a campaign, in a hotel room or elsewhere, you've got to figure out something else to do. So typically it was push-ups and sit-ups in the hotel room, or hopefully there might be a hotel gym, but a lot on my own. And I do a lot of that now, today, in Uzbekistan.
And when you do have time, such as during your ambassadorship, to get out, play some racket sports, get out on your indoor or your outdoor tennis court. I think everybody should have both,
Yeah,
probably.
definitely.
But like that or getting out to play squash. What does that bring you? What do you enjoy about it, and how do you use it to connect with other people?
The older you get, the more you know you have to force yourself to really exercise. And the nice thing about racket sports is you're playing somebody else, and it forces you to move. And it was very competitive. There were some people at the embassy, that I would play every day, or some of the other ambassadors as well. Some from the European countries that play more squash. With them, it's a real game. When you're playing your embassy staff and you're the ambassador, you never know if you're really beating them or not. And I was I was in Türkiye earlier this week, and I went back and played the same staff member I used to play all the time, and he whipped me the first time we got out there. And I thought, did I ever really beat him, or was he letting me? So anyway, I would threaten any of them that they would be the control officer for a particular high maintenance member of Congress who would come through on a codel. And so that would usually get them to lose the game pretty fast. So you have to be careful about are you really that good or not? But I enjoy racket sports like that because it forces you to move, I'm competitive, and so that's what I like.
And as a competitive player, like let's take squash, for example. Let's break it down. What do you see as your strengths and weaknesses? And like you're stepping into a game with an opponent, what are you going to do to pick them apart?
Oh, I mean, hopefully you studied the game a little and watched the pros on YouTube. All the Egyptians and Pakistanis, they seem to be the best at it. And you just hit to the backhand. The beauty of squash, as opposed to racquetball, which I sometimes play if I can't find any other competition, is with racquetball, the better you get, the shorter the rallies. You get a kill shot and it's done. With squash, the better you get, the longer the rallies. It's tough to kill the ball, and you can get to it. And so you just try to. I mean, the key is to get in the center of the court, and so you can get to anything. And so every shot you hit, you try to make that shot so you can get to the center of the court for the next one, for the return. And so that's the key to that game.
And when you were in the Senate, there's a court in the Dirksen building, right? Did you play on that? And who did you have like a partner?
Yeah, I did.
Staff?
I mean, in the Senate, no, they're the partners. There are some good players. Tom Udall, who retired the same time I did and was ambassador to New Zealand, is a very good player. The one I played most is Charlie Dent. Charlie Dent, he and I were in the house together, and while we were in the house, there's a game. We had a lot of basketball games in the house. We used to have really good games every day at 4:00. We just have it in our schedules, all of us as gym caucus. And the nice thing about the house gym is no staff can come in there ever. And so you're really alone. And so 4:00, we had good games. Mike Oxley, member from Ohio years ago, he used to kind of organize these games, and he was also the manager for our baseball team for years as well. But we had really good games at 4:00, and we tried to convince a lot of committee chairmen not to schedule committee hearings during that time, and had no floor votes, so we could play some basketball. But that was good. But there was a game, it's called one wall paddleball, and it plays more like squash than racquetball. You use a paddle and a racquetball, and Charlie and I, and then Bob Dold, not Bob Dole, but Bob Dold, another one from Chicago. The three of us would play each other and keep a tally on the whiteboard down there, and so virtually all of our colleagues knew, who was up for the week and who was down, and so that was a lot of fun.
Were there any trash talkers?
Oh yeah.
Let's name some names. Like what went down? What went down? Come on.
No, I'm not gonna name that. But I have to say one interesting thing. The first time I got the house, this is 2001. And I go down and I'm playing basketball at 4 o'clock. And there's these old vinyl chairs that are along the side of the court that are, I mean, straight from 1972, this weird green vinyl. And we're playing ball for a while, and all of a sudden I look over, and there is this old wrinkly man, naked as a jaybird, sitting there reading the paper with his legs crossed, watching us play basketball. I thought, what old Elks Lodge is this? It was just the weirdest thing, and nobody else seemed, upset by it. But I thought, this is a different place. But I won't say who that was, but he was there for quite a few years.
Just reading the paper the entire time.
Reading the paper, just
catching up
there. Yeah.
I feel like every gym has one.
Well, the old house gym did. I don't know if it's the same now. But then later, I used the Senate gym when I was over there, and that was a little different. There's no big court or anything to play, but you had the same thing. Chuck Schumer's there on the treadmill or a stationary bike on his phone, reading, and so or talking to constituents or whomever else, and you have the same people doing the same thing every day.
Did you have a workout
when you were
buddy?
Well, like I said, in the house, certainly it was people that I played basketball with, or those who have played one wall paddleball, Charlie Dent, Bob Dold, and others. So yeah, it was the same people. Paul Ryan is a big workout guy, and he got Tony Horton to come in and work us out a few times. And,
hold on. Let's hit pause on that. So Tony, for people who may not be, Tony Horton to me, cultural icon, right up there with Billy Blanks, Taibo boxing. But Tony Horton, of course, the creator of P90X. Anybody who doesn't know, if you're somebody who's into CrossFit or High Rocks, before there was all of that, if you were super turbo, you were doing P90X, you had all the DVDs and you were getting down. So they bring in Tony Horton. What's the setup? Does he have you guys like lined up with equipment? Like what went down?
No, it was, you're on a kind of a wrestling mat kind of thing. And he put us through the whole routine. And there's a pull-up bar somewhere, and there's, it was a whole routine, stretching and push-ups and sit-ups and lifting. But it was tough, really tough. But it was a lot of fun as well.
Those are hard workouts.
Yeah, they are. They're killer. So yeah, I cheated on a lot of them. Yeah, but that was fun. Tony Horton, and sometimes some famous basketball folks would come in as well, just to say they'd been there, I guess. But no, those were good times. And then the baseball game every year, you practice that for a few months before the game, and it's great camaraderie as well. And in the house gym, it really is true. Republicans, Democrats, you really don't bring politics into that place much, and so it's a good place to be. And that's where, when I was in the House, I got to know people like Dick Durbin, who was in the Senate, but some of them would still come over to the House gym, and Chuck Schumer as well. And when I got over to the Senate, I joined the Gang of Eight with them and John McCain and Lindsey Graham and others. Because I knew them from the House gym. So you get, it helps with legislating as well.
Yeah, you start to get to know people in quite a different way when you loosen up a bit, right? Like when you're doing physical activity together like that. That's awesome.
As far as other things here, one thing I did here in Türkiye is train for the Bosphorus swim, to swim from one continent to another. Asia to Europe, they have that swim every year, and you have to qualify for it. And anyway, but it's a lot of fun. So I did some training for that. I'm not much of I like to, spearfish. I'm pretty good when I have fins and a mask and a spear in my hand. But to just swim, several miles, that's not me. But
how far is it?
But I had to. Well, if you were to swim straight across the Bosphorus, and we're talking about in Istanbul, where east meets west, you have the Asia side and the European side. And so they sponsor the swim from the Asia side to the European side. If you were to swim directly across, it would be just under a mile. But you swim out to the middle, and then the Black Sea current kind of kicks in, and you end up swimming 4.1 miles before you exit on the European side. And so you're swimming at quite a clip with the current, but yeah, it's quite a ways. But they want to make sure that nobody drowns, and so they require people to qualify for it. And I was qualified for it, trying to bid in the winter at that same Sheraton pool. And I thought, well, okay, 25-meter pool, I've got to do this many laps in this amount of time. I think it was swim a half mile in 14 minutes, whatever. So I sketch it out and I do it, and I think, hey, I've got this. And did it for a couple of weeks. Thought, oh, this is easy. And then my bodyguard, Boulent, pulls me aside and he said, "You know that pool's only 19 meters, don't you?" And, I had to do my calculations again. Realized I had to swim a lot faster than I thought. And so anyway, it was a little more workout than I figured, but qualified, and then the swim was actually great. It's a cool thing to do, and once in a lifetime opportunity. But no wetsuit. I mean, it's the Bosphorus. This was in August, and the water temperature is about 78, so it's good. A few jellyfish that you hit along the way, but they don't sting. And they stop all the ship traffic that goes through the Bosphorus for 2 hours. And if you don't finish in 2 hours, then they pull you from the water, or you'll get flattened by a freighter. But the key is to stay in the channel and make sure you're in the current, and then exit at the right time. I didn't exit at the right time. I exited a little earlier and got in a back current that wasted about 15 minutes, but I made it. But it's a great thing to do.
And other than just getting in a pool and starting to swim with this idea of, I have to hit this standard this time for this distance to qualify, and then I'm going to do it. Did you seek out any instruction? Did you have a training program or a coach, or just get in there and do it?
There were a couple of other ambassadors. The Dutch ambassador was more of a swimmer than I was. And so he actually came over and used our pool a few times. So I got some advice from him. He'd done not similar swims. There's nothing similar to that. But yeah, he offered some advice. And I got it from a few others in our embassy community that had done this swim. So yeah, you want to get advice on that one. Yeah, the last thing you want to do, because press, in Türkiye and others are aware that the ambassador is going to swim it. The last thing you want to do is not finish it. So that would be intensely embarrassing. There are a lot of people who didn't finish. They get off to the side and get in a back current, and then just kind of have to tap out. But it was a good swim.
Yeah, definitely. And when you look ahead, you seem to have these big adventures that you kind of set your sights on and you go out and do them, which a lot of people don't do. So it's awesome that you're doing that. And it sounds like it's brought a lot of connection with lots of different kinds of people into your life. It's scratched the itch for adventure, and you've found the answer to some questions that you've had since you were a kid. So as you look ahead, like, what have you not done that you'd like to explore? Like, what's on the roadmap?
People are saying, well, why don't you do some other survival, like on a mountain or in a forest or something? I say, no, not a chance. That's too tough. I want to be on a beach somewhere. But anyway, it's a different kind of difficult, I guess. But I don't want to be any cold weather anything. That story of Shackleton and several other uh, you know polar expeditions that I've read about. I want none of that. But I would like to do another survival trip or two in the Pacific. What I'd really like to do, a friend and I were kind of planning a little sailing trip. I'm not a real sailor. I pretend to be one, but like from Australia, just across the East Timor Sea to Borneo or around there, that would be a blast. And just spearfish as you go and survive that way. It's a whole different experience being on an island, or if you're really surviving. If you don't have food or water, and you just have to scrounge for it. I don't know. There's something primal about it, I guess, that just every time I do one of these, I've done 4 now. As soon as I finish, I think, well, I scratched that itch, but the itch comes back. You want to do it again? Can't convince my wife to come with me. She just as soon as there's a hotel on that island. But anyway, it's just something that comes back. There are a lot of travel. I love travel. Obviously, I'd like to do more Southeast Asia and a lot of places on Earth I haven't gone to. Africa, I've lived about 3 years in Southern Africa, and I'd like to do more of the stories of Stanley and Livingston and others are just fascinating. So that's a little more dangerous, but anyway, I'd like to do more of that.
A huge thank you to Ambassador Flake for joining me and Jonathan Kaplan here on the inaugural episode of the United States of Sweat, presented by Choose the Hard Way. Find Ambassador Flake at jeffflake.com and on all socials at Jeff Flake. Find Jonathan Kaplan at writingwithkaplan.substack.com. Those links in the show notes. For senior executives, professional athletes, and political leaders and venture partners, podcasts aren't optional anymore. They're mandatory and mission critical. At One Real Voice, I coach leaders one-on-one to thrive as storytellers and to stand out in the long-form podcast conversations where real influence is built. When you're ready to be great, DM me at HardwayPod or send an email to hello@onerealvoice.com. Thank you to my sponsors, blockchain.com, Laugh Cycles, and Palm Tree Podco, my podcasting partner, for their support. I'll see you next time.